Have you ever wondered why certain emotions follow you like a shadow? Ones you can't quite explain, as if they belong to someone else, someone from long ago. Sometimes the ache in your chest has no name. It visits in silence, in the early morning when you're not yet fully awake. A sense of weight, of longing. A sadness that feels older than your own life. You might think, maybe I'm just tired, maybe I'm too sensitive. But beneath that vague melancholy, something ancient breathes. Something inherited. We are born into stories that are already in motion. Before your first breath, 1,000 lives touched your existence. You came into a world already shaped by the fears, hopes, and wounds of those who came before you. Their struggles didn't end when their lives did. They passed on quietly, invisibly into your blood, your bones, your memory. This is not poetry. It is truth. Your grandfather's silence after the war, your grandmother's tears she never allowed to fall. The rage of a father who was once a frightened boy, the frozen heart of a mother who was never held. These fragments of unfinished pain, denied expression, found a new home in you. But this inheritance is not a punishment. It is a calling. The pain that didn't find words in them now finds voice in you. The trauma that never had space to heal now aches through your life, asking, will you be the one to stop the cycle? Most people live as if their suffering began with them. They blame their sadness on the events they remember. But much of our emotional pain doesn't begin in memory. It begins in the body, in the soul, through echoes of the past. You were born into a river already flowing, and that river carries the debris of many storms. To begin healing, we must first see, not with the eyes but with the inner vision, the kind that dares to feel what was never spoken. This is why your loneliness sometimes feels larger than life, why rejection cuts so deep, why you keep attracting the same pain in different forms. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're carrying what generations could not hold. When we ignore this truth, we live in confusion. We think we're defective. We search endlessly for solutions outside ourselves, relationships, success, distractions. But nothing can silence an ancestral cry that longs to be heard, because what was suppressed in your lineage does not disappear. It transforms into anxiety, into guilt, into the chronic feeling that you're not enough. And so you strive harder, or you withdraw. You become whatever you think will finally win love, but that emptiness persists until you stop, breathe, and ask, whose pain am I carrying? In that moment, the inner landscape begins to shift. You are no longer a victim of your history. You become its witness, and that is the beginning of transformation. This is not about blaming your family. It's about understanding, compassion, seeing them not as parents or grandparents, but as souls who also inherited silence, who did the best they could with what they had. Many never had the tools to heal, but you do. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here. You are the turning point. The one who feels deeply not because you're weak, but because your soul is ready. Ready to give new meaning to old stories. To listen, not just to your own wounds, but to those passed down through whispers, glances, and quiet resignations. Healing ancestral pain doesn't require you to know every detail. It requires presence, openness, the courage to sit with discomfort long enough for it to reveal its origin. Sometimes, just naming what was never named is enough to release it. There's a place in you that remembers, not through logic but through resonance, a familiar grief, a fear that feels borrowed, a recurring dream you've never understood. These are not accidents. They are messages, invitations. You are the living altar of your lineage, and every time you choose to feel rather than suppress, to speak rather than silence, to forgive rather than blame, you rewrite history, not only for yourself, but for those who came before, and those who will come after. You may never receive the apology you deserve from the past, but you can give yourself the understanding no one else could offer. You can be the ending to a story that was never fair, and the beginning of one that is finally free. And that is sacred. There are moments when your body speaks more honestly than your mouth ever could. You say you're fine, but your chest tightens. You smile politely, but your stomach clenches. You move through your day as if everything is under control, yet your sleep is shallow, your breath is short, and something unspoken stirs just beneath your skin. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. We live in a culture that praises resilience but punishes sensitivity. You're told to be strong, to move on, to leave the past where it belongs. But where exactly does the past go when it's never truly seen, never given space to be honored, grieved, or healed? It stays. In the tremble of your hands when conflict arises, in the lump in your throat when you're asked to speak your truth, in the fatigue that no amount of rest can cure. You carry stories inside your muscles, your nervous system, your very cells. Some of this is your own pain, but much of it isn't. It's ancestral, inherited, passed down like a sacred fire, except no one ever taught you how to hold it without getting burned. Trauma that isn't healed becomes embodied, and what's embodied becomes behavior. You might flinch at affection without knowing why. You might sabotage intimacy, even as you long for connection. You might feel the need to be perfect just to feel safe. These aren't personality traits. They're survival patterns, forged in response to wounds that predate you. Perhaps your grandmother learned to suppress her needs to keep the peace. Perhaps your grandfather drank to silence his grief. Maybe your lineage holds stories of war, displacement, poverty, abandonment, pain that was too great to bear, so it was stored instead, locked away, but never lost. You inherited not just eye color and bone structure, but emotional blueprints, unfinished sentences, uncried tears, fears that were never named but became law in your nervous system. And now your body is trying to finish the conversation. Every unexplained panic attack, every moment of dissociation, every flash of rage or flood of sorrow. These are not flaws. They are the body's attempt to surface what has been buried for generations. They are your ancestors' grief, knocking on the door of your awareness, asking not to be repeated but to be remembered. Healing begins when we stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to those before me that lives on through me?" This question changes everything. It shifts you from self-judgment to self-compassion. It moves you from shame to understanding. Because when you realize your pain has roots older than your own story, you no longer carry it as a personal defect. You carry it with reverence. You are not just a person trying to cope. You are a soul on a sacred task, to feel what others could not, to hold what others had to drop, to alchemize pain into wisdom. This is why healing hurts. Because you're not just healing yourself, you are metabolizing the ache of those who came before, who lived through what should not have been lived, who survived without truly living. Your body knows this. That's why certain places make you uneasy. That's why your heart races in situations that seem safe. That's why certain words, smells, or gestures trigger disproportionate reactions. It's not irrational, it's ancestral memory, rising like smoke from a fire you didn't start, but that you can choose to extinguish with care. Do not silence your symptoms. They are your guides. The headache that comes after seeing someone who reminds you of your father. The tightness in your chest when someone raises their voice. The numbness when someone gets too close. These are clues. Not to be dismissed, but to be followed. Gently, tenderly, with curiosity, not judgment. Because the body doesn't lie. It protects. But protection, when overextended, becomes a prison. What once saved you can now limit you. The armor built around your heart becomes a wall against love. The tension in your spine becomes rigidity in your life. And so the healing journey is not about forcing the body into ease. It's about listening, creating safety where there was danger, stillness where there was chaos, choice where there was compulsion. And in that space of trust, the body begins to soften, the breath deepens, the mind quiets. And for the first time, you feel what it's like to truly inhabit your own skin, not as a battleground, but as a sanctuary. You do not need to fix yourself, you need to feel yourself fully, slowly, with respect for all that your body has carried without complaint. You are the sacred ground where centuries of pain can finally rest. There is an invisible web that connects all of us, threads spun across time, across bloodlines, across the collective heartbeat of humanity. You cannot see it, but you feel its pull. You carry its weight, the fear that isn't yours, the shame that never belonged to you, the patterns that repeat not because you choose them, but because something deeper, older, continues to echo through you. This is the unconscious collective field, the silent inheritance of our species. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a vast inner realm where the memories, instincts, and archetypes of all of humanity are stored. You are not just an individual navigating your own life. You are also a vessel for what has not yet been healed in the soul of the world. Every generation passes on not only its wisdom, but also its wounds. Some of these wounds are specific: war, colonization, exile, oppression. Others are more subtle but just as powerful: emotional absence, abandonment, systemic fear, suppressed grief. When these traumas are not acknowledged, they don't vanish. They enter the collective stream. They find new expressions through the next available body, the next available mind. That body might be yours. You may have always felt a heaviness you couldn't name, a sense of being haunted, not by ghosts, but by unfinished emotions. You may have carried guilt as if it were a birthmark. You may have avoided joy as if it were dangerous. These responses often don't make sense in the context of your life story, but they make perfect sense in the context of your lineage, your culture, your ancestral field. And so the work of healing cannot be done alone. It is not just a personal project. It is an act of service to something greater. To heal yourself is to become a clearing in the forest of human memory, a space where the noise of centuries can fall quiet, where the unconscious can rise to the surface, not in chaos, but in recognition. This is where the archetypes live, not in books, not in theories, but in your breath, your dreams, your reactions. The mother, the wounded child, the warrior, the exile, the sage, all of these live within you as echoes of the collective experience, and they speak through emotion, through image, through repetition. They are not metaphors. They are the living language of the soul. When you feel lost, confused, overwhelmed, it is often because a deeper archetypal pattern has been activated. You are no longer just reacting to a moment. You are reliving an ancient story, one that has been told many times in many forms, but this time you have a chance to change its ending. That is the power of consciousness. It interrupts the repetition. It brings light into the places where only shadow has existed. And in that light, choice becomes possible. To become aware of the collective field is to step into a deeper kind of empathy. You begin to see that much of what divides us, race, nation, class, belief, is illusion. Underneath it all, we are responding to the same primal fears, the fear of abandonment, of meaninglessness, of exile from love. We build nations, religions, ideologies to protect us from these fears, but they return. In every generation, in every war, in every broken family, until someone dares to feel them instead of fleeing them, until someone chooses to stay present in the fire and transmute it. That someone could be you. You are not responsible for what happened before you, but you are responsible for what you do with what lives within you. If trauma is transmitted through the collective field, then so is healing. Every act of awareness, every breath taken with intention, every moment of compassion ripples outward. It touches not just your life, but the larger fabric of existence. You may never see the impact of your healing, but you will feel it in the way your heart begins to soften, in the way your relationships shift, in the way silence becomes less frightening, in the way beauty starts to return not as decoration, but as truth. You were never separate from the collective. You were never just you. You are a node in the living memory of the world, a sacred point of contact between what was and what could be. And when you begin to live from that place, not as a burden but as a devotion, your life becomes something holy, not because it is perfect, but because it is true. There is a silence that runs through families like a river buried beneath the floorboards. You cannot see it, but you can feel its presence, cold, persistent, shaping everything. It is in the conversations that never happen, in the glances that hold more than they say, in the stories that begin and then fall into quiet. These silences are not empty. They are full, heavy with what could not be spoken. Some families pass down heirlooms, others pass down wounds. There are names that were never mentioned again, photos quietly removed, events erased, emotions swallowed whole. And though these omissions were meant to protect, meant to keep the past from poisoning the present, they do not disappear. They become shadow. Shadow is not evil. It is not dangerous. It is simply the unacknowledged. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The shadow does not seek to destroy you. It seeks to be seen. It holds the grief that was never cried, the rage that was never released, the guilt that was never cleansed, the shame that was never named. And when we inherit this shadow, we don't do so with awareness. We do it through absorption. You might find yourself terrified of abandonment, even in stable relationships. You might feel guilt when you rest, as if you're betraying someone. You might sabotage your success, shrink from attention, overgive in the hope of being needed. These are not flaws, they are echoes. Echoes of someone who was abandoned, someone who never rested, someone who had to stay small to survive. The past lives on in us when we don't know it's the past. To break this spell, we must name what was never named. We must look into the attic of our lineage and open the boxes that no one dared to touch. Not to shame those who came before, but to set them free. Because when we deny our ancestral shadows, we imprison our ancestors in silence and ourselves in repetition. What was hidden becomes holy when it is held with compassion. There is deep fear in this work. Fear that if we look too closely, we will drown, that the pain is too great, that the truth will destroy the fragile peace we've managed to build. But the peace built on avoidance is not peace. It is a performance, and it cracks. In our health, in our relationships, in the quiet moments when nothing is wrong, and yet everything aches. To meet the shadow is to step into the underworld of your own story. It is not a descent into darkness, but into depth, into memory, into clarity. And as you go deeper, something unexpected happens. You begin to understand. You see that your father wasn't cruel. He was afraid. That your mother wasn't cold. She was never held. That your grandparents didn't fail. They froze because that's what trauma taught them to do. And with that understanding, forgiveness becomes possible, not as a moral command, but as a natural unfolding of the heart. This is not the same as forgetting. Forgiveness without truth is just another silence. But when truth is spoken, when pain is honored, forgiveness becomes the ground for something new. A way to love the parts of yourself you learned to hate. A way to return to what is real beneath the armor. You might begin to write letters you'll never send. Light candles for names you never knew. Speak aloud to photographs. Cry in the places they could not. Laugh in the places they weren't allowed to. These are rituals, not of superstition, but of liberation. Because when you heal what was hidden, you don't just heal yourself, you heal the field. You make it safer for the next to come. You stop the cycle not with blame, but with presence. You become a sanctuary for truth, and in that sanctuary something miraculous begins. The shadow becomes a guide. It starts showing you what matters, what needs tending, what wants to grow, what you are here to transform not just for yourself, but for the soul of your lineage. This is sacred labor, the kind that can't be rushed. It requires patience, reverence, and the willingness to walk into the fog without knowing what you'll find. But what you find will not be a monster. It will be a memory, a part of your story that was left in the dark, waiting for your light. And when you bring it into view, gently, lovingly, it no longer controls you. It joins you. You become whole. There comes a moment in every journey when understanding is no longer enough. When knowing your past, naming your pain, and tracing your patterns no longer brings the relief it once did. You have mapped the terrain of your wounds, uncovered the roots of your suffering, and sat in the ashes of silence. But now something stirs, a deeper call, not to analyze, but to transform. Healing is not an intellectual act. It is a sacred return. A return to what was lost before words, a return to the body as home, to emotion as teacher, to presence as prayer. It is not a performance for others to witness. It is quiet, intimate, often unseen. The world may never applaud your inner work, but the soul knows, and it watches with reverence every time you choose truth over fear, presence over numbness, love over legacy. You cannot change your ancestry, but you can choose what you carry forward. You are not here to bear the weight of every generation. You are here to remember that within you lives a deeper inheritance, one that predates trauma, one untouched by sorrow, the inheritance of resilience, of beauty, of knowing how to begin again, even after everything has fallen apart. You are the living prayer of those who never had the chance to heal. Their stories live through you, but so does their strength. When you sit in silence and feel the ache they could not name, you are honoring them. When you speak the words they were not allowed to say, you are completing a sentence that was left unfinished. When you choose a new path, you are giving them the freedom they never knew they needed. And you are not alone in this. The path of individuation is not about separation from others. It is about becoming so wholly yourself that you become a mirror through which others can see their own soul more clearly. Individuation is the birth of true authenticity, born not in defiance but in deep inner listening. What do you truly want to carry forward? What ends with you, and what begins with you? These are sacred questions. They cannot be answered quickly. They must be lived, felt, offered to the silence. And in return, the silence offers you clarity, not all at once but in fragments, a dream, a tear, a sudden knowing, a moment of peace where there was once only chaos. Sometimes transformation looks like fire. Other times, it looks like stillness. Do not underestimate the power of the small, the slow, the unseen. Healing does not always announce itself with grandeur. Sometimes it's a single breath taken without fear, a single day lived without the old armor, a single moment of softness where there used to be steel. These moments matter. They are holy. They are enough. To create ritual is to give the invisible a form. You might light a candle for the ones who came before. Whisper their names into the night. Write your truth on paper and bury it in the earth. Place your hand on your heart and simply say, "It ends with me." These acts are not meaningless. They are medicine. They mark the space where something old is released and something new is born. Healing is not erasure, it is integration. You do not become someone else. You become more fully who you are. You gather your fragments, your ancestors' fragments, and you weave them into a new story. Not one of suffering, but of sovereignty. Not one of silence, but of voice. Not one of fear, but of love rooted in truth. And when you walk this path, not perfectly but sincerely, you begin to feel the shift in your breath, in your body, in your relationships, in the way life responds to your presence. Because something has changed. You are no longer running from the past. You are walking with it, consciously, respectfully, with the power to choose differently. And that is liberation. Not forgetting, not pretending, but living with eyes wide open, heart unguarded, soul awakened. You are not here to repeat history. You are here to redeem it. You are not here to carry the pain forever. You are here to offer it a place to rest. And when you do, your life becomes a sacred offering, not only for your own peace, but for every soul that walks beside you, seen and unseen. May your healing be your revolution. Have you ever paused, truly paused, and asked yourself, what am I still carrying that was never mine to hold? Not every pain belongs to you. Not every fear is your own. But through you they found a voice, a home, a heartbeat. And through you they can also find rest. If these words stirred something within you, an ache, a memory, a sudden clarity, it's because your soul recognizes the truth. You are not here by accident. You are the one your lineage has been waiting for. The one with the strength to look back without turning to stone. The one with the courage to feel, to forgive, to begin again. What if healing is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world told you to forget? You are not broken. You are breaking cycles. And that is no small thing. That is sacred work. If this journey touched you in any way, I invite you to honor it. Leave a comment below. Tell us where in the world you are watching from, or share which part of your story feels ready to be released. Subscribe if you haven't already, so this space of soul, silence, and self-remembrance can continue to reach those who are still searching. And if you feel called to support this work in a deeper way, you can now offer a super thanks. Your contribution helps this channel continue to hold space for the healing of others, just like you. May the silence bring answers. May the wounds become wisdom. May you find your way back, not to who you were told to be, but to who you were always meant to become. You are not alone, and your healing matters. See you in the next video.